Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Welcome to the launch event of the Value Recognized Research, or as we call it, the VPR research. My name is Naiden Rashkov, part of Plan International Asia Pacific, and my role today will be to guide you through the various spaces of this event. And this is indeed my pleasure. Before we start, we must recognize the productive and inspiring partnership between Plan International and ASSET-H&C. This collaboration led to the development of the VPR research and brought to us today's insightful reflections and intriguing discussions on women's economic empowerment in the Mekong Hospitality and Tourism sector. So I hope that you are as exciting as I am. So let's get started. We have a very packed agenda today ahead of us. We'll continue with some Zoom reminders. The whole agenda will be 1 hour and 45 minutes approximately. So we'll start with some Zoom reminders and housekeeping rules for your participation. Then, to kick off the event, we will hear the opening remarks from Ms. Krista Zimmerman, Head of Influencing and Policy of Plan International Asia Pacific. Moving forward to the essence of the event, Caluag from Plan International Asia Pacific will present the key findings from the research. And then Sophie Hartman from ASSET-H&C will facilitate two very interesting panel discussions. One of them will focus on enabling businesses to empower women workers, and the other one will focus on the role of skills building on women's economic empowerment in the Mekong H&T sector. Lastly, I'll have the opportunity to close this event with some final notes. So, without further ado, let's start with some Zoom reminders. Firstly, I must say that we are recording this webinar. I know that there will be a lot of questions and comments and contributions from the audience. So if you don't want to be part of the recording, please text us in the chat box and we'll make the necessary to cut you from the recording so that you're not visible there. I'm sure that we all have attended millions of Zoom calls this year, but for the sake of refreshing our minds, here's some Zoom reminders. You can use the chat box function, which you can find at the bottom of your screen, or if you are using the mobile version of the application, you can find it using the 3 dots at the bottom right corner of your mobile phone screen, and then the chat function. Please, during the webinar, stay muted. You can mute and unmute your microphone from the bottom left corner of your desktop screen and mobile phone screen. Also, you might want to use the options for participants, which you can find in the participants panel at the bottom, which are yes, no, go slower, faster, or other options. You can also use this on the mobile phone version. And now, after this short and sweet introduction and refreshment of Zoom functions, it's time to officially kick off this launch event. So I would like to introduce Ms. Krista Zimmerman, Head of Influencing and Policy of Plan International Asia Pacific. Krista, up to you.
Thanks, Naiden. Hello, everyone. My name is Krista Zimmerman, and I'm the Regional Head of Influencing and Policy for Plan International. I'm delighted to welcome you to today's webinar, which will introduce Valued, Paid, Recognized Research Report, developed in partnership between Plan International and ASSET-H&C, a network of hospitality vocational training centers supporting the professional integration of disadvantaged students in the Mekong region. Advancing girls' and women's rights is at the core of Plan International's purpose. Our teams challenge social norms, advocate for policy and practice changes with different stakeholders, and develop innovative solutions for the economic empowerment of young people, and especially girls and young women. The Valued, Paid, Recognized research is part of a 5-year program called the Girls Advocacy Alliance, which Plan International has been implementing in the Asia Pacific region to promote girls and young women's economic empowerment and to address gender-based violence. One of the program's components focuses on work with the hospitality and tourism sector, and for it to have policies that promote equal opportunities for women to access decent work opportunities. The publication which we present today supports these efforts by providing a landscape of good practice, business-led initiatives for women's empowerment in the Mekong hospitality and tourism sector. The research draws upon key publications on women's empowerment and features insights from nonprofit vocational training centers in Cambodia, Myanmar, and Vietnam, as well as from members of the ASSET-H&C network. This initiative sheds light on some exciting findings, but I will leave it to my colleagues, especially to Iris, who will share these in more details, including more of the publication's key findings later in this event. But thank you everyone for being here and for everyone who is a part of this research. Our partnerships are valuable to us, and this was certainly a very fruitful partnership with ASSET-H&C.
Thank you very much, Krista. And now to introduce the ASSET-H&C network, I would like to share a video on their behalf. Once again, thank you, Krista, for these opening remarks and the introduction of the research and the event itself. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Iris Caluag, our colleague from Plan International Asia Pacific, to share with you the essence and the key findings from the research. Iris, take it away.
Thanks, Nacho, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I'm happy to be here today to give you an overview of the findings of the research that I think will be made accessible after this event. Nacho, if you're happy to move the slide. For the next 15 minutes, I want to just focus on the findings from the desk review and the key informant interviews that were conducted this year. But to start with, there are three things to just serve as background for this presentation. The first is that the research takes place in the Greater Mekong sub-region, particularly in the countries where ASSET-H&C partners work, such as Thailand, Vietnam, Myanmar, and Laos PDR. We also conducted this research before the COVID-19 pandemic, and so much of the findings here actually reflect more the experiences of our respondents prior to the pandemic, although we did make references throughout. The second thing that we want to mention in the background is that the reason this particular sub-region is particularly important is because it's prime for tourism. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, the region served as a hotspot for tourism. In 2015, for example, the region had over 50 million visitors and $66.8 billion worth of international visitors expenditures. If you add, the expenditure, if you add that to the other Southeast Asian countries, tourism as a whole made up 12% of the region's GDP alone, and that's only second to the Caribbean. So it has tourism, at least for this particular region, has a major economic role. It also has a major role in the lives of women and men in the countries. Compared to other sectors, women in particular have relatively greater access to employment opportunities in the H&T sector in the Mekong subregion, and this echoes global trends in the global hospitality and tourism sector, where at least 5 out of 10 workers are women. Um, when we talk about access, though, we think the work isn't done there. We find that women's empowerment, which is in the next slide, faces several challenges in the H&T sector, particularly in terms of the disproportionate representation of women in informal, flexible, and part-time work. We also know that from literature that women are more likely or are vulnerable to be in jobs that have poor working conditions and less pay. They have lack of equal access to career advancement, and they're more vulnerable to gender-based violence and harassment. The World Bank in 2017 finds these challenges to be rooted in entrenched social norms, gender segregation, and limited access to assets and safety nets. For example, when women tend to occupy roles that focus on cleaning or serving guests, this is because they also tend to occupy those that are socially prescribed as feminine roles, which serve as extensions of their household roles and responsibilities. The nature of these kinds of roles not only reflect the gendered roles that they should follow in society, they also tend to be informal, inflexible, and part-time in the workplace. With such roles requiring limited qualifications or skill sets, this might explain why there's relative ease of access to the sector for most young women, but at the same time, we believe this results in their expendability and employers having little incentive to invest in women's skills development or career advancement opportunities. While this is often acknowledged in the literature, little is also done to address the pressures on women to who have to juggle work and care responsibilities, which may also lead to women just not participating in the labor force altogether. Next slide. Next slide, please. So in terms of the research, next slide, please. We conducted this research because we wanted to understand what good practices have enterprises adopted in the H&T sector in the Mekong region to promote the economic empowerment of women workers, especially young women. In collaboration with ASSET-H&C and particularly with support from IECD, we conducted this research to scope out those good and emerging practices that we could find, given some major knowledge gaps in the literature, particularly about the experiences of employers in the Mekong countries. Next slide, please. So in the research, we had to define two things. One is the good practices. When we say good practices, please note that we're referring to interventions with tangible and proven benefits to women workers and businesses themselves. And I think on the screen, we identified examples of what those benefits could be, although they're not an exhaustive list. We also refer to women's economic empowerment as the process through which women become increasingly able to make choices in resources, agency, and achievements. But we also want to note that empowerment itself is a process through which an individual, in this case a woman or a young woman, or young women, are able to gradually acquire the ability to make decisions about their own lives and take action to fulfill those decisions. To operationalize that in the context of the research, we used the Global Compact's Women's Empowerment Principles, which covers the following areas: gender parity, women's safety from harassment, equal pay, and women's voice and representation. Next slide. In terms of methodology, we conducted a literature review which covered key publications on women's empowerment, gender equality, and women's position in the H&T sector. And this also included gray literature, which we identified on the slide, as well as academic papers from 2010 to 2019. To augment the knowledge gaps that were identified in the literature review, we also work with ASSET-H&C to conduct key informant interviews from nonprofit vocational training centers in Cambodia, Myanmar, and Vietnam. And I think the next slides present these findings. So let's start with the desk review findings. The literature is at least uncovers 5 or 6 things that are worth noting. One is that there are context-specific data and knowledge on women gaps, particularly on women's empowerment in the H&T sector. Globally, the issue of women in the hospitality sector is talked about, but there's very little knowledge about what positive case studies exist regarding companies taking active steps for women's inclusion. There's also very little knowledge about the discussion on, empirical data to support women's participation in this particular sector. And there's also very little knowledge about comprehensive overviews of the nature of women's working conditions and gender equality contextualized in the Mekong sub-region. The second thing you want to note is that social norms and the nature of work in the sector make it a challenging environment for women to progress and secure decent work conditions. From the positive case studies that exist, they serve as exceptions to the norms, which suggests that there's really not a wider strategy or approach for supporting women's empowerment in the sector, much less supporting that particular strategy or initiative in the Mekong countries where many of us operate. Most literature focus on entrenched discriminatory gender norms, which at least inform us about what the links are between occupational segregation in the workplace and the roles and the attitudes and behaviors that women and men have to exhibit at home and in the communities. And from what does exist, there are very few positive examples, and most of them do focus on NGO or development assistance or women starting their own businesses. Next slide. In the literature, we also found that when we talk about what employers are doing, private sector initiatives and what they really do and to what degree they're successful is quite limited. For example, we did find that Accor's Women at Accor Generation program has been aiming to promote gender parity, women's career progression, and representation in decision-making roles. We also found that Starwood Hotels and Resorts, for example, runs a global diversity and inclusion strategy. But examples that are led by local employers or local associations and examples of how these have really transformed the lives of women who participated in these private sector-led initiatives are still relatively unknown. And when we talk about entrepreneurship in the H&T sector, a lot of literature suggests it's a promising outlook for women in the region, but they also indicate that there are several challenges that entrepreneurs have to deal with. This is argued by the UNWTO, which also point out challenges usually related to the lack of access to financing, business skills training, and technology. The ILO considers that a pro-poor tourism agenda to benefit women in rural areas significantly through SMEs, but this requires collaboration among various stakeholders. So I think what the evidence is saying is that there are some examples that we can draw from, but not enough examples for us to really understand what the landscape is on the in particular women in the Mekong region and women in the hospitality and tourism sector in this particular region. So next slide, the next slide shows us the findings of the interviews. And in the interviews themselves, we find that there are positive examples from the experiences of the vocational training schools on how facilitating women's empowerment through education and training can contribute to positive returns for private businesses. Training schools did that by undertaking advocacy, which were aimed at employers. So examples of this include asking for remuneration for interns, asking for salary increases, and policies that promote gender equality and women's empowerment in general. These supported respondents' views of how to promote empowerment, which is to enable women to defend themselves and their rights. With the interview respondents, we also found that we confirmed that social norms and entrenched and outdated perceptions of the H&T sector were still major barriers to women's empowerment in the same industry. Because they primarily work in rural and marginalized communities, they found that gender roles and stereotypes were particularly entrenched and pervasive. These communities saw that the H&T sector was inappropriate for women, equating them with working on the street and selling alcohol in informal bars. Women were expected to contribute to the household income through agriculture and not through the H&T sector. So extra lengths were needed for women to simply enter the sector. Much more, we can imagine, would be needed to get them to climb up the corporate ladder, so to speak. Next slide. We also had some examples of how training, specific examples of how training and upskilling serve as a major pathway to economic empowerment. But we also felt that respondents also felt it must be accompanied by socially responsible and social value-driven life skills and gender transformative training. Some of the respondents, which I think you can see on your screen, used, for example, theater classes or conducted comprehensive classes on women's empowerment and gender equality, and even having women in the staff, and mostly women in the staff, to support the efforts to enable women to know their rights and for them to be confident in claiming those. Training schools also have clear value to and influence on the businesses that they work with, but it is unclear to what extent businesses benefit from women's empowerment and social impact elements of the trainings themselves. The engagement that the training centers did and the relationships that they were able to build were essential so that hotels and hotel partners were sensitized to worker well-being and gender issues. So when these were successful, such efforts revealed benefits that businesses might have initially overlooked. For example, they may not necessarily initially see the value of having quality staff, but as the interns decided to stay because they had better working conditions, they had better pay, they found the value of that higher retention rate as well. There are also clearer benefits to women, right? Like, for example, opportunities for social and economic mobility, such as working abroad, accessing work that need higher caliber skills. Next slide, please. There were examples of how women's empowerment should start in the when you talk about promoting women's empowerment in the corporate culture, the respondents also had their views about what those could look like. So, for example, women's empowerment is seen to be fundamental to the sector, and businesses need to embed it within the corporate culture. But it doesn't necessarily have to come from a piece of paper, such as, a strategy or a policy. Just embedding it within the day-to-day work and, mindset of employees can already be a starting point. And finally, one other thing, because I'm running out of time, is when you talk about alumni networks and training schools themselves, they are supporting the advocacy and they can serve as the intermediary for women workers and employers, sometimes serving as a platform to raise specific and sensitive concerns, including harassment-related concerns from the interns themselves, and that can be quite a valuable thing to think about. But just to wrap them all up, let's go to the next slide, which is the final thoughts. So what's clear from the literature and from the respondents is that NGOs and socially driven businesses or training centers fill in several gaps that are left by the state or businesses in their responsibilities. They serve as platforms whenever needed, or they can also serve as the skills development centers when those opportunities are not available. We also think that there's also been some effort to have inclusive and accessible skills training, which serves as a first step to empowerment, but still the idea of social norms need to be addressed. And that does go beyond the work of training schools because it does require the effort of employers, NGOs, but also community actors, including young people themselves. There's obviously a huge lack of evidence of not only positive business efforts, but just literature about the experiences of employers in the hospitality sector in the region, which I think I've been emphasizing throughout my presentation. And that needs to feed into a more robust research agenda that focuses on the greater Mekong sub-region, their private sector's policies on empowerment and practices, as well as qualitative evidence of business benefits and empowerment-related benefits to women. I think you can read more about this in the research that we're going to make available after this, but happy to answer any questions that you may have right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aris, for this detailed and very insightful presentation of the key findings of the research. And thank you also for staying sharply on time. Now we have a few minutes. If anyone from the audience has questions or any comments they would like to share. So we have one question, Iris, in the chat box from Alessandra. What is the role of childcare provision, and how or to what extent does it play a role in what business provides? What do you think?
Hi, Nacho. Thanks for that question, Alessandra. The role of childcare provision is very important, especially since we haven't really completely addressed the issue of unequitable distribution of care work between men and women. Having childcare in workplaces, not only in the H&T sector, but in any kind of workplace, does help alleviate the burden of childcare, especially since that can be a major reason why women may drop out or may be frequently absent from work in the first place. To what extent does it play a role in what businesses provide? Businesses that do provide this have been able to report lower turnover and absenteeism rates in other sectors. There's much less is known about the H&T sector, but what we can say is that when you do have childcare services provided, your women workers are more able to focus at work and also spend less time worrying about what's happening to their children. They're less likely to be absent, and so even from that point of view, businesses can see that there are some benefits that can accrue from that provision. Some businesses consider it as a role that they need to play to keep their workers satisfied and productive. And I think there's much to be done about businesses that still don't see that importance. But from the example of the training centers, there is still some space for us to sensitize employers about why this is important.
Thank you, Aris. A few other questions from the chat box. One from Sales Vilena, which is twofold on the gender digital divide, and she acknowledges it's not in the scope in the research. Were there any findings related to women's access to devices and information? And the second part of this question is, how is the H&T sector portrayed in the media? Are there any findings related to this?
I think they're generally interesting. Unfortunately, they're not within the scope of the research as you suggest. I can say though that in terms of the digital divide, there is still a digital divide, and therefore there is some inaccessibility issue about how women can pursue or at least claim opportunities online, especially when your communities are off the grid, have less, mobile signal, or just basically if you're coming from a lower income bracket and cannot afford a smartphone device, you can't really access services that are online unless there's an intermediary, right? Like an NGO or a community center that provides those services for you. In terms of the media, we didn't uncover specific findings about how media has affected the portrayal of the H&T sector. What we can infer from the findings is that there is still this mindset about what the H&T sector's reputation is among different community members, and that tends to stick. That may be driven by the media, that might come from other factors though.
Thank you, Alice. And final question before we wrap up this space. What was the age range of the women who were part of this research?
We were not speaking with the women themselves directly. We spoke with the representatives of the training schools who work with young women. Categorically, when we talk about young women, we refer to young women ages 15 to 24, which is the UN definition. But I think ASSET-H&C partners are more able to address this question, since normally in each program they have their own age bracket to work with, and that's normally contextualized in the age bracket defined by a country.
Thank you very much, Iris, for this, and thank you everyone for your questions. You can keep posting any questions or comments in the chat box. Iris will stay with us, so she'll be able to respond to hopefully all of them. And now I think it's time to move forward with the next space. Drawing from the insights of this research, it's time to turn our attention to our guest speakers today. We've prepared two panel discussions with some very interesting guests who will discuss more about their experiences on women's economic empowerment in the Mekong H&T sector. The moderator of this space will be Sophie Hartman from ASSET-H&C. Sophie, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Maiden. It is a pleasure and an honor to moderate the two panel sessions of today. So for the first discussion, we are fortunate to have three passionate women who will share with us their view on why it is important to enable businesses to empower female workers in the tourism and hospitality sector, and how to ensure that women can thrive in the workplace. So the first one is Ms. Yin Nyosu, aka Misu, Managing Director of the Inle Princess Group and founder of the Inle Heritage Foundation. Misu is also the chairperson of the Inle Heritage Hospitality Vocational Training Center and the founder of the Inle Heritage Private School, also known as the Bamboo School. Misu is a strong advocate of sustainable and responsible development practices, especially women empowerment, heritage, and environmental preservation. She has been named Fortune and Goldman Sachs Global Women Leader in 2013, Vital Voice Global Women Leader in 2015, and Fast Company 100 Most Creative People in Business in 2017. Welcome, Misu. Then our second panelist is Ms. Nia Klatte. Nia is a sustainable and responsible tourism specialist. Since 2013, she has been working in Southeast Asia, where she combines her passion for sustainable development and for travel. As regional sustainability coordinator, she assists Khiri Travel in making all the destinations more responsible, with a focus on the triple bottom line: people, planet, and profit. She is also the executive director of Khiri Reach, the independent charity arm of Khiri Travel. Hello, Nia.
Hi.
Hi, Nia.
Hi.
And our last speaker for this session is Ms. Alessandra Alonso. After holding senior positions in prestigious companies, including the World Travel and Tourism Council and KPMG, Alessandra pursued her passion for supporting women and diversity in the industry by setting up Shine, her own consultancy company. In 2004, she co-founded the Shine Awards for Women's Achievement in Travel, Tourism, and Hospitality. And in 2017, she created Women in Travel, a social enterprise dedicated to empowering women through employability and entrepreneurship in travel, tourism, and hospitality. Welcome, Alessandra.
Thank you very much, Sophie.
Hi, Alessandra, and thank you to the three of you for joining us today. So, as mentioned by Iris, one of the key findings of valued paid recognized research study is the lack of publicly available data of tourism and hospitality companies proactively pursuing policies and initiatives to promote women's empowerment or well-being in the workplace in the Mekong region. The literature that exists for Asia Pacific essentially focuses on challenges that women encounter in their professional life, but present relatively few good practices for women empowerment. This lack of documentation does not necessarily mean that good practices do not exist at all. And today we are lucky to have with us various representatives from the private sector who are convinced that women's empowerment is key to business success and who are effectively investing in female employees. So I would like to start with a first question for Misu. Misu, can you please share with us how women's empowerment is embedded in Inle Princess Group's culture, and what are the main benefits of such focus on women?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this panel discussion. It is an honor for me to be here. And from my humble experience here in Inle, I would like to share a bit of my personal experience in my now 24 years in working in tourism industry, especially in hospitality here in Inle. It's very unfortunate, like you said, and Iris before, there is not much of data concerning how is the situation for women going women worker going in the hospitality industry. It's very strange because honestly, I think that in my personal experience, we have more women worker in our companies, or in hospitality businesses in general in my country, and unfortunately there is not much in management position. And I think even in the entire country of us, I only know about 1 or 2 women GM, and in other part of the country too. So we're not there yet. However, I strongly believe that it is absolutely possible to have this gender equality or women empowerment in a working place. Especially empowering women is good for business, and that is something that I've been trying to share with other companies. And panel discussion like this is very very good to have more visibility, I hope, in future, because it is really good for business. I will try to explain in brief, because myself is a woman, and not because I'm a woman I have to do it this way or that way. Even if you are a manager or an owner, a male owner, it is very important to have this not seen as a woman or a man in a working place. For me, it was a lot of things are based upon my personal experience, but I think that men in my family, for example, my own father or my brother, they see that there are many things that they can't do because of in hospitality industry especially, we are working from human to human, and unfortunately and fortunately, what is good having a female management body, for example, is that there is much more. I won't say that men are not human enough, but when it's come to like management or leadership with empathetic and compassionate way of managing day-to-day operation is a much more sustainable and much more decent and happy environment in a workplace, because of without human being well-being of human being at service is important, because it will going to reflect on the service that they are giving to their customer. Let's say we are talking about mother in working place. Yes, when we started, we have a lot of young girls and boys who came and work in this hospital, this hotel that we created 24 years ago, and they were just young, girls and boys, and they fall in love and they start making weddings and creating more and more families. What happened is I still have all of them. Most of them are in my management team. What happened is that when they were like part of the family in the company, right? So when they get married, we were kind of like involved. Yeah, I mean, actually, the hotel grew up together with the employees, and I myself grew up with my team. So that what happened is that when they have babies, like I myself have breastfeeded my own children. So I really wanted to have a space for them to have a nursery so that they can bring their children to the work environment. And some may say that it's quite impossible because children are noisy, children were going to, and guess what? I'm extremely lucky that we have an environment that is quite large, so that there is a space for children. And guess what? The children grew up together with the parents closer, so that the parents are less worried for them. And what happened is that the children grew up in an environment where their parents are not too far, and also the working colleague, they look after each other. There is this sense of community and sharing responsibility grow organically. Nothing of this is created as a corporate social responsibility, or in those days we don't even have an SDG goal or things like that. But it was simply because it is good for business. Because when parents are happy mentally and physically, and when the children are happy, and when it is integrated this way, since the very beginning of the company started, it becoming like a company culture. So for me, it was easier to be part of, I don't need to do that as a CSR. And I think that we should encourage for more businesses in future that, yes, CSR is something to guide you, or SDG is something to guide you. But if you look at to your own business value that you are giving to the customer, if your employee is not happy, it is no way that your customer will be happy. That's one thing for me to take away, like why it is good for business. Second is that, the feminine energy and masculine energies are different. They're complementary, but they're slightly different. And when you are in a hospitality industry, which is a much more to welcoming, serving, cooking, I'm not saying that only women can do that, but there is a lot of human touches that is core to this businesses. So that when we are promoting, like for me, I always say that my freedom as a woman is tied to your freedom as a man. So I don't want our male counterpart to be feeling like threatened or left behind, because sometimes we talk a lot about women empowerment and so on, and they feel tiny, and which is absolutely ridiculous, because every day is celebration for men already. And so I always say that actually it's very bad for men to be isolated. Well, they're not isolated, but when they quickly quite intimidated when you encourage about talking about, oh, we should be having more women in management and so on. So I don't encourage usually this way. Usually is that I also found, like, even with our own children, we have this social, especially in Asia also, I think in other culture too, we try to make men to be like baby boy to be like already like a man, and they are born to lead automatically, and we encourage them to be, boys don't cry kind of speeches. And I don't like doing that with my own children, nor with other children as well, because of it really make men to be like only decision making, and the woman has to follow. And actually we have to break this barrier, and you can do that also in a working place. When men feel like they're not threatened, like they are not, either you lead or you follow, it doesn't matter. It doesn't diminish you from your manhood. It doesn't make you less important than women. And same thing for women, that because of your like a position in management, because I do have a lot of women in management position. Actually, I was more, kind of like 50-50. And actually, when I have male woman GM and woman chef, which is very rare from other companies sometimes, but it is because of they manage with this female energy. Sometimes things I feel like men in the company are feeling less threatened, because of this is also part of company culture, that no man following women is less. Au contraire, we're taking out some pressure, culture or culture pressure, invisible culture pressure that both gender is suffering from. So we try to talk about this quite openly, like a joke when we started, but then nowadays, it's no shameful for men to be like wiping their kids or giving birth to their child. Au contraire, we embrace that, and we encourage our men to be saying like, he can do it. And so in a way we have this much more like a equal, organically, again, we don't force it, but it's to understand that men also suffer from the expectation from the society. And a working environment is something that they are kind of like on the safe environment. So when you create this safe environment where they could express their fears or their concern, you know, how do you change your diapers or your child, or how do you, I mean, this is part of the men conversation nowadays, now that they become father. And it's so much easier for me to kind of like not worry about women will be like sexually harassed or so on. Sometimes I even say that don't even don't tease too much to men, because sometimes when they go back to village, they don't like to be seen as inferior because they are running under the woman and so on. But in the very beginning, we were worried, but later on, it is not something that we should be concerned of. So a working environment where women and men embrace each other, positivity and what they can bring together. And when both gender recognize that, the working place is such a relaxed and such a happy place that, again, it's good for business. So why we have to be kind of doing that only for CSR or try to no, it is good for business. So that was more or less it. And that point I just want to highlight is about children. Yes, I just started with this vocational school because actually lack of skill in the hospitality industry was something that I was foreseeing, because of there are many people who will start to invest in our country. Investing in country for material is easy. You have money, you can just build whatever you wanted. But what about the soft skill? What about people who, the local community who could get a job? So that's one of the reasons why we started with this vocational training center. Again, we try to run it as a business to be financially self-sustained, and so that we can do our own whatever needed for our area in hospitality industry. So again, girls and boys came. And what I realized that the early childhood development is so important, because we have all these lost generation and high school drop-off due to not only due to the education system or lack of capacity, like financial capacity from parents. It still is the way that we raise our children. And I can see that back at home, because actually in our business in 24 years, we have celebrated more than 150 weddings, and more than 170 babies were born. So, you know, okay, we built a hotel, but we ended up like building the entire village. But what I want to say is that all these children, they grew up together, also like my children. And you realize that for future generation, not to go through what we have went through as a woman, we really need to embrace the early childhood development and invest in that. So we ended up with another school for early childhood development, where we have now 3 years, we've been running with 162 children the last year, because this year we can't open the school. Again, go back to the, when the parents feel like their children's future is kind of like not secure, but I would say that there is a facility that will support the future of their children also. Again, it's good for business. Guess what? I don't need to kind of like retain any kind of employees by raising salaries or giving package of this and that. Go back to simplicity and simpleness of just embrace the humanity, and don't try to separate women or men, or because of regulations say this and that. Just respect the humanity or human suffering or human concern, and the rest is easy to handle. I mean, profit is not only reflected in number, it's also reflected in those invisible number. And for me, I would encourage all businesses, whoever invest in not only in hospitality, any businesses, you can always have a space for family or working mother. You can always have space for girls. You can always have space for children, and it is good for your business. I don't know if I answer really your question, but this is my 2 cents to share today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Miss Sue, for this great example of creating an empowering working environment for women, especially working mothers, and about involving men in the process. I have now a second question that will go to Nia. So Nia, as a destination management company, Khiri Travel plays a central role in the travel value chain. Can you explain us how, at its own level, your company supports its female employees and promotes women's empowerment in the sector?
Yes, thank you very much, Sophie. To give you a bit of background information about Khiri, as you said, Khiri Travel is a destination management company. So that means we create and deliver personalized itineraries to travel agents in mostly Europe and Northern America. We were founded in 1993, and today we operate in 7 countries, 5 of them along the Mekong, which are Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. And sustainability has always been one of our core values since the day we started. So also our social impacts and the question of women empowerment are extremely important factors for us. And what's really important is that actually 75% of our workforce is female, which means that women empowerment is incredibly important for us. And I want to give you a few examples of what we do internally to support women. One aspect is capacity building. So yeah, we understand how important it is to support personal and professional development. So whenever we can support our staff in developing their skills further, we try our best. So we promote from within whenever possible. So that actually right now, almost all of our team leader and department management positions are held by women. And I want to give you an example from Vietnam. This is exactly what happened. So Miss Ni got promoted to be our sales manager and to run the whole department. And her ambition was actually to follow a management course. So Khiri Travel not only supported her financially by covering parts of the course fees, but we also adjusted her working hours so that she could attend all her classes. And we have similar examples from Myanmar, where one female staff actually did her MBA in finance. So again, we accommodated her with flexible working hours so that she could get her degree. And one of my favorite stories, the story of Miss Sherry. She's a full-time English-speaking tour guide for us in Myanmar, but she's always loved the Spanish language and always had a passion for it and wanted to learn that language. Again, Khiri, we supported her so that she was able to follow that course. And she was for us not only as a English-speaking tour guide, but also as a Spanish-speaking tour guide, which is brilliant. And I think these examples really show that if we support our staff developing or improving new skills, we as a company will benefit in the long term. And I also want to give you a few examples of how we support female entrepreneurs or how we can support women within our supply chain. In Laos, for example, we have developed a whole new tourism product together with Ms. Noi. Ms. Noi is the wife of one of our tour guides, and she's an amazing chef, and she loves cooking. She's extremely passionate about it, and it was always her dream to share her passion. So we sat down together with her and we developed a new cooking class, and now she's welcoming our guests and teaches them the Lao cuisine, and at the same time she's able to generate some additional income for her family. In Vietnam, our guests have the possibility to visit Miss Han. Miss Han is an incredible woman. She's very passionate about sustainable development in her country. So she's not only set up an organic community farm where she works with local farmers in the area to promote responsible farming, but she also set up a river erosion mitigation project where she engages the local youth and where she works with the local schools to raise awareness about climate change and the effects on central Vietnam. And on the side, she's also busy setting up prenatal clinics in rural areas. So she's really an incredibly strong, super ambitious woman. And our guests have the honor to actually meet her, sit down with her, and hear her incredible story. So she didn't have any connection to tourism before, but we want to give her the platform and the possibility to share her experience and to educate travelers coming to Vietnam about climate change and social issues. And at the same time, of course, she makes a bit of extra income with the tourism dollar, which she then reinvests in her projects. Whenever possible, we also include different women's centers which support underprivileged women in our itineraries. And we do that in all our destinations. So for example, in Cambodia, every traveler going to Stung Treng visits the Women's Development Center, which offers education, employment, and social services to women from poor backgrounds. At the center, our clients have the possibility to buy weaving products from the women, so directly from the producer, so we can be sure they benefit financially. And same actually in Laos. When in Vientiane, our guests always go to the Lao Disabled Women's Center, which is a vocational training and life skills training center. And generally by visiting these centers, we raise awareness about the importance of women empowerment, and we can directly create income for individual women. So I hope I could give you some insight in what you can do as a tour operator to support women empowerment. Of course, there's lots more to do. And I think there will be some time for questions after the panel.
You are right, Nia, there will be some time for questions, but thank you very much for this insight on how the company can foster women's leadership through capacity building and also through the support to small female entrepreneurs. I now would like to ask Alessandra about her own experience. Alessandra, valued paid recognized research study evidenced the fact that in the Mekong region, the expectation of women to leave their job to start a family and look after their children is still pervasive, and that for women who want to enter back into the workforce, such parental break acts as a barrier to career progression. Can you please share with us how Women in Travel, the social enterprise that you founded, contributes to remove such a barrier?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sophie. And first of all, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon again. Thank you for inviting me today. It was fantastic to hear from Misu and Nia. So congratulations to both ladies and to the companies they have so contributed to up to today, and it was really wonderful to hear about all your empowerment initiative. With regards to Women in Travel, CIC, so as you say, Sophie, we are a social enterprise based in the UK and work all over sort of the UK, but also increasingly internationally, to support women economic empowerment using travel, tourism, and hospitality as a force for good. So our mission as a social enterprise, which really means a commercial company that reinvests all its profit into the mission and doesn't distribute any dividend, is to enable women to work and contribute and realize themselves both personally and professionally. And I guess we've already heard from our distinguished speakers before about the fact that the sector, the hospitality sector, the travel and tourism sector, is really inherently attractive to women because of its characteristic, of its attribute of being a sort of highly human touch sort of sectors, and one in which people matter the most and the human touch matters the most, which is something that I guess is particularly attractive and particularly suitable to a lot of women. And the other fact is that, generally speaking, the hospitality sector is having or has low barriers to entry, and therefore enables women to go into work, to develop, and to go back into work after a period outside relatively easily compared to other sectors. Now, Women in Travel as a company, I guess what it does is it facilitates, it enables, and it sort of empowers women to go back into work. We have and work with a whole range of women that go from a highly marginalized and highly vulnerable background all the way to underrepresented. So we often work through our programs with women who are referred to us from charities like domestic abuse charity or refugees charity, sexually trafficked modern slavery charity, so who rescue and support the women in the early stages. And then when the women are ready to go back into work and to move on with their life, they are referred to us and to our program. And what we do at that point is to really support the women through training and through mentoring and coaching. And our approach is very much a hands-on. So we give women sort of the soft skills training, the confidence, and the sort of the kind of guiding and guidance that is necessary to feel that they can sit in front of an employer, have an interview, and then go back to work and move on in their life, as I mentioned before. And we've been doing this almost since inception. So we've been running program since 2017, 2018. But I guess that these are not the only women that we see. There are women that sort of would have not considered themselves vulnerable prior to the pandemic, but are now in a vulnerable situation. Maybe they have been made redundant, maybe they have been sort of, or they've lost their income, they potentially run small businesses, but they were linked to one or two major clients in the travel and tourism sector, and these clients have now stopped purchasing or buying the services of these businesses because of the pandemic. And therefore they now come to us looking to be supported and to sort of go back into work through sort of our services and through our support program. And for this kind of women, it's not so much about the skills or the training, it's more about the access, the network, and the opportunity to speak to as many employers and to be supported by sort of perhaps mentors who can help them and direct them and open doors to other opportunity. And of course, confidence, it's always a big barrier to go back into work. And this is something I want to sort of mention sort of briefly. I think we've heard it from Miss Sue and we heard it from Miss Nia as well, about the fact that often women feel themselves unable to pursue a certain opportunity because they don't feel they have all the skill or all that is required. And it is a well-known thing that a woman may look at a job description and see that she can't do one of 20 things, and as a result she doesn't apply. Whereas, you know, research shows that often men look at a job description, they can do 5 out of 20 things and think themselves perfect for their job. So, you know, beyond the stereotype, the truth is that women, even at senior level, seem to suffer from a lack of confidence and seem to sometimes think of themselves as imposter. So suffering from imposter syndrome is something that is very common with women. Now, if we look also at sort of another, if you like, segment of women that we support, so those who are from Black and minority ethnics, we in the UK, this, for example, industry, it's a very white male industry at the top. As Miss Sue also said, this is an issue that is the same in my experience across all sectors, not just in the Asia Pacific. And I think that, you know, we need to make sure, certainly here in the UK, certainly in Europe, but I think across the sector, you know, that whatever has happened over the last few months, and therefore the Black Lives Movement and the Me Too movement and everything that has been going on over the last 12 to 18 months is taken on board and is really I guess, explored in order to learn the lesson that can be taken away from it for the hospitality and tourism industry. So we started 2 years ago, well ahead of Black Lives Matter, I shall add, a BAME Women in Travel to really look at representation. And what we are seeing is that often women from Black and minority ethnics are not necessarily less confident than other women and are really interested in the sector, but they struggle with visibility. So they find themselves unable to go back into the sector or to sort of to break through the sector because they don't feel that they are seen, that their talent is noticed by employer. So one of the things that we are very keen and we are working very hard to do is break down this barrier of visibility. And we are trying to raise awareness and really enable more and more women from the so-called BAME sort of communities to be seen by employers. And this is particularly true, and we've had some success recently with our initiative. We just onboarded Google, and we have some big players who are now saying, actually, we recognize the importance that all women play in the sector, and therefore we want to support all women to develop themselves and their career. So I think from a viewpoint of women in travel, women returning to work, whether that return is due to childcare or sort of the fact that they've had a baby and they've been away for a while, or whether it's to do with the fact that actually something much more challenging has happened to them and they've been out of the sort of working economy for a few years, or whether it's women who are sort of moving across and transferring their skills, we note in some common pattern. Confidence and, as I was saying, imposter sort of syndrome at every level, it's definitely there, and therefore we need to support women. And as women also, we have to support women. So it's great once again to hear from the other ladies on this panel about your initiative. And then I think it's about giving the women access, visibility, and the networks, open the networks that will enable them to gain the support. Mentoring is hugely valuable in that respect. So we run mentoring circles, mentoring initiative, and we often also provide sort of through our bank of mentors, one-to-one mentoring. And yes, indeed, we have just seen a question flashing. We have mentoring program, and we always ask for people external to our organization to sign up as our bank of volunteer mentors, so that when women come to us, we have always a great number of people we can match them to, women and men. But we also very much encourage mentoring within organization, and mentoring is one of our key expertise. So we help organization develop their own mentoring program, and that is something that we encourage and we support quite extensively. So hopefully this has given you some food for thought, and thank you again, and happy to take any more questions. Or please feel free to contact me also separately after the panel and the conference.
Well, thank you very much, Alessandra, for your answer on supporting women returning to work, including in COVID-19 times, and also on helping women progress in their career, which concludes actually our first panel discussion. Again, I would like to thank the three of you for sharing your efforts and best practices that we wish can inspire others. And we will now move to the second panel discussion. And Misu, Nia, and Alessandra will join us again for the Q&A session that will take place after this second moderated discussion. So if you want to ask them some questions, you can already do so, and you just have to submit them through the chat box. So thank you very much to our three panelists, and see you at the Q&A session. And now we are going to move to the second panel discussion. So in this session, we are going to further discuss the role of skills development for women's economic empowerment. And for this, I am extremely pleased to welcome three dynamic women dedicated to building the capacities of the most vulnerable to help them create a brighter future for themselves and for their family. Our first panelist is Ms. Phan Tu Hien. Hien has been working for 15 years with various international organizations on projects related to small and medium enterprise development, as well as women's economic empowerment. Such experience gave her the opportunity to develop in-depth understanding of the root causes that limit the chances for girls and women to make decisions for themselves. She's now managing the Skills Opportunities Youth Economic Empowerment Program of Plan International Vietnam and support girls and women in 5 remote and mountainous provinces to realize their economic rights, to have better access and control over resources, and to pursue decent work opportunities of their choosing through wage work or self-employment. Good afternoon, Hien.
Yes, good afternoon and good morning, everybody.
Our second speaker for today is Ms. Soka Chan, training coordinator at Salabai Hotel and Restaurant School in Cambodia. For the past 14 years, Soka has put her leadership and passion at the service of the most vulnerable. Her role at Salabai Hotel and Restaurant School is to oversee the training department's operation, and in her capacity of certified Asian trainer and assessor, she also monitors the implementation of the Asian curricula within the school. Welcome, Soka.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Soka.
Thank you. Yeah.
And then our last panelist is Ms. Dang Thi Huang. Huang is fascinated by the difference that education can bring in the lives of those who are disadvantaged. After training at Koto, Huang started her career in the hospitality sector. In 2013, she furthered her study in Australia and earned a master's degree in entrepreneurship and innovation. And back to Vietnam, she joined Koto as director of partnerships and marketing, and also founded her own social business, Hope Box, to help rural Vietnamese women who have experienced domestic violence. Welcome, Huang.
Hello, thank you so much for inviting me.
So thank you, Huang, Hien, and Soka for accepting our invitation to join this panel discussion. We are eager to hear your insight on capacity building and its role in women's empowerment. And actually, the findings of valued paid recognized research study demonstrated that inclusive and accessible vocational and life skills training is a fundamental first step to the empowerment of young women entering the tourism and hospitality industry, as it greatly increases their value to prospective employers. So as an introduction for this discussion, I would like to start with a question to Huang. Huang, you are a successful young woman, and when we see you here today, it's difficult to imagine that things have not always been easy for you. You are an alumnus of Koto and a living example of the transformative effect of education. Could you please tell us more about your personal path and how your training at Koto has been life-changing?
Yes, so thank you so much, everyone. And I'm sorry I joined a bit late due to some meetings. So I joined Koto since 2006. I started my journey with very disadvantaged background, and I was born in a very small village of Vietnam in the north of Vietnam, and my mother was a single mom. At the age of 12 years old, I had to leave school, and but as a child growing up in the countryside, I was very rare that. It was a very rare case that I love reading and I love studying, and I always loved to become a teacher. So I spent most of my summers holidays with my uncle and my grandma. So because my uncle was a teacher, and I always look up him, and my ideas back then was always, you know, like working in the school and having free books to read. But then my mom became very sick. She got kidney infection and some other health issues. So I decided to leave school and I stayed at home and working on the farm with her. My brother loved me so much, and he knows that I love studying. So he homeschooling for me for 6 months. And then I moved to Hanoi and I worked as a babysitter. And I was very little. I was only 13 years old, not even 13 years old. So I was very little. It was like a baby looking after another baby. I earned about $10 per month and sent the entire money to help my mom. And working from 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. the next day. I did it for about 4 years, moving around from families to families. And at that age, as a culture of things in my countryside, you know, girls who reach 16 or 17 years old have to go back to the countryside, getting married, working on the farm, and having a lot of kids. And for some reason, I decided that wasn't my life. So I tried to stay back in Hanoi, and I went back to informal school. So when I went back to informal school to did my year 8, and it is a very, rubbish school. And my families that I lived with, they wasn't very happy for me to study. So they kicked me out of their family, and I ended up being a street kid. So I woke up at 2 a.m. every morning, and I found a place to live, but it was very, very poor. It's under the staircase of a lady, and the area was very complicated. So I woke up at 2 a.m., cooked sticky rice, and sold it on the street. And during the day, I worked like cleaning and made cake and sold it on the street as well. And went to work, went to study at night, and went back to work on the street until 12 a.m. So every day I managed about 2 hours to sleep, and it happened for nearly 2 years. And life back then was very grey, and there was no hope, and it was very dangerous for a girl to live on the street and work in that area. So one night I was very lost, and I rode my bicycle home from school, and one of my classmates, she was very kind, and she said to me a random things. It was a very random conversation, and she said, "Do you want to apply to Kodo?" And I straight away I said that no, because I was treated very badly by the local people, and I didn't believe anyone. But 2 months later, I didn't know where to go, so I asked her what is Kodo, and she explained again. So she gave me the address, and I rode my bicycle again to Kodo and check it out because I didn't trust it. It was too good to be true. So when I came to Kodo, the first impression was amazing, and I was standing in the training center, and I said that this is my place. So I tried very hard to get into Kodo. But my mom told her she didn't believe it again, and she says that don't go because you might be trafficked to China, because there is no way it's like Kodo existing in this world, something free, and then giving you a stipend, and then giving you a job. So she keep asking me to not apply to, but then I still applied, and so I got into Kodo, and I studied at Kodo to become a waitress. And then in 2007, I finished at Kodo, and I worked for the hotel, for the Intercontinental Hanoi Westland Hotel for nearly 2 years. And then I decided to go back to Kodo to give back the experience that I have been having outside, and because Kodo is always my most passion. So I came back to Kodo, but somehow I always wanted to continue my study. So I did my English, and I always wanted to enter the universities. So I talked to my founder, the founder of Kodo, Jimmy Pham, and he said to me that we will help you. So he helped getting me a scholarship in Australia, and 2.5 years later I went to Australia. And I did my associate degree in commerce, and then I ended up doing my master at Zimmerman University of Technology. So after that, I went to work for an IT firm as a business analyst, and then I didn't see any impact that I created, because in the big firm everyone was talking about millions US dollars funding or revenue or project, but no one is talking about social impact. So I decided to go back to Vietnam and work for Kodo. Hello. So
Thank you. Thank you very much, Huang, for sharing this very personal insight, demonstrating the power of education for disadvantaged youth. I'm now going to move to Soka with a second question. So, Soka, at Salabai Hotel and Restaurant School, each intake is composed of 70% of girls, and throughout the school year, a variety of workshops are organized to help them become strong young women in their personal and professional life. Can you please share with us the reason for such a focus on women?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sophie, for giving me a chance to join the forum. As I noticed, it's very good forum that I never used to join it. So it is my first time to do that. So I hope that definitely it gave me a lot of an idea of the empower of the women. So first of all, I would like to brief a little bit regarding to our school program. So Salabai program has been launched in 2002 by friend NGO Asipul Kambod to fight poverty and human trafficking in Cambodia through vocational training. The goal of the program is to train 150 young Cambodians each year and free of charge in the main profession of the hospitality industry. Students are provided with accommodation, food, and health care for free during their work training. The training program is 11 months in 5 different departments: restaurant, kitchen, front office, housekeeping, and beauty therapy. These include technical skill, English language, social soft skill, and soft skill. For practical experience are providing at school and also internship at the hotel. Why Salabai decided to take like 70% of the women? This decision was made to empower young women as in Cambodian. Women's role in the mainly stay home, cleaning, cooking, and minding the children. The situation is even truer in the countryside. By giving them the chance to study freely during a year at Salabai, it increased their level of education, which is usually lower than boys are, and it enabled them to access more stable jobs.
Thank you very much, Soka. May I also ask you initiative that your school implements for future students in terms of employment?
Thank you. Normally, the school provides some workshop to the student to empower to the women, such as domestic violence, sexual abuse, gender and HIV, personal hygiene that focus individual boys and girls, women violence, and law of abortion. This workshop help the women to take a better care of themselves, be more aware of their rights, and more confident to pursue a career. Our students can get a job within 4 to 6 weeks after their graduation. Several young women work in a high standard hotel and improve their skill to be good professional. They can save money and support financial to their family. Some of the students decide to continue their study at the university. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Soka, for walking us through these interesting initiatives and their benefits. I now would like to ask Hien to share with us her work with women entrepreneurs. So Hien, from your experience, what are the typical needs of young women who consider launching their own business, especially in terms of skills?
Yes, thank you very much for giving me this chance to present in this virtual meeting. On this case, I would like to give you our experience on women's economic empowerment from perspective of a development organization like Plan International Vietnam. So Plan International Vietnam has been established since 1993 and working as one of the biggest girls' rights organizations in Vietnam. According to our country strategy in the period 2020 to 2025, we will focus on 3 core areas of work and put girls, especially ethnic minority girls, at the center of the strategy. The first area is early childhood care and development for ethnic minority children. The second one is preventing gender-based violence. And the last one is skills, opportunities, and youth economic empowerment. So now come back with Sophie's questions. I would like to emphasize that the target group that I will mention here focus on ethnic minority young women only. So talking about their need for their own business, I would like to list down here 3 key points. The first of all, it is finance burden. According to World Bank's report in 2018, ethnic minorities make up only 15% of population in Vietnam, but account for 72% of Vietnam's poor. Therefore, the need of finance to invest in livelihood model or small business is crucial with ethnic minorities people, especially young women. The second one is technical knowledge. Only 6% of ethnic minority people aged 15 and above has participated in professional or technical training. The dropout rates are often caused by economic burden, as youth from poorer households are pushed to leave the education system to support their families. So therefore, they are lack of very basic knowledge on technical topic on livelihood models that they want to choose for their own business. And the last point.
No, I won yesterday.
Sorry?
It's okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So the last point here is the appropriate skills and proper employment guidance. Even with very few people who have chance to participate professional or technical training, they also haven't been equipped appropriate skills with the current outdated curriculum provided by government vocational training center nationwide in manners of practical way, such as financial management or business running in small scale, or marketing or negotiation, communication, etc. Yes, back to you, Sophie.
Thank you very much, Yan, and sorry for the background noise. Now that you explained to us what are the needs, can you also explain how these needs can be addressed?
Yes. So plan staff, we are working with selected youth members, local partners to develop entrepreneurial ability with support and participation of local business owners. So we have several interventions. First of all, we develop such kind of entrepreneurship program and provide training on business administration. So we have to go through a process of different steps. We develop the criteria of those who can be potential to entrepreneurship in the context of the project area. And then we advertise those on local government and people's committee, high school for pre-selected business options, and share the information with the youth in all project comments. Then we will select potential ones who want to participate in the entrepreneurship program through interviews. We choose 20 most potential candidates and then classify on the type of business, and at least 50 of those will be female. So they will become members of interest or youth groups for implementing selected livelihood models later. So those one will attend some kind of intensive training course at provincial level toward market-oriented and on basic skills of an entrepreneurship program. So it is the first session, and then they will come to the business coaching and the on-the-job training. So we will provide business coaching to those one who participated the course or as mentioned above and want to start their own business. The local people who successfully run the small business are contracted to come and coach the young people. So the local business owner who have the same kind of products are the best one to provide the most practical and useful knowledge. The higher business owners will be locally based to make it easier for youth, especially female youth, to approach and communicate with coaches. It also enables the coach to make more frequent visits to supervise and give advice during the time. So besides all those two interventions, we also support the youth to access loan from banks or from government programs. So normally it takes 2 days only to approve a loan from government or from banks, but there's only 1 day for loan distribution each month. Besides, the district also have different priority areas for loan distribution in each month. For example, they will give loan for business houses, for building houses or investing in a business. So they have to choose. So with our long-term partnership in local authorities, so we will connect our target group to work closely with the district authority to plan ahead the application for their loan. So yes, that's what some kind of intensive initiatives that do in Plan Vietnam to support the young people, the young women to become entrepreneurs? Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Yen, for sharing with us how to support disadvantaged women in developing a successful career through self-employment. We are actually now coming to the end of this session, and again, I would like to thank all our panelists, Huang, Soka, and Hien, for their valuable contribution to this discussion. And so, as announced, we will now have a Q&A session. So I would like to invite Miss Sue, Nia, and Alexandra to turn on their camera to join us as well. And it seems that we already have 2 questions in the chat box. So maybe I will start with the very last one, which is talking about gender stereotypes. And the question is, how can training centers and businesses help challenge these stereotypes? Is there anyone who would like to start answering that question?
I can start from the business perspective. So I think it's important, we realize what's important is to, yes, hire from within. So if there's a female staff who's doing a great job, why not hire her to be the manager of the department? It's very easy, very simple to do, and it just shows the other women in the company that they actually have the chance to achieve higher positions and that they can develop further. And I think it's also important to raise awareness that, or have an open space where women can ask for support if they want to do a course, if they need a flexible working hours because they have to watch their kids at home or something like that. I think it's open to have an open door policy where these issues can be addressed and where they feel comfortable bringing up these issues and ideas and suggestions. Sorry.
Well, thank you very much, Nia. Yes, indeed, I think that flexibility is one of the key answers. Is there anyone else who would like to elaborate on that question before we move to the next one?
I just wanted to add a little bit about this. I think, as Nia said, an open environment is very important. So I think the culture of the organization is critical. You know, as we heard earlier today, if the women feel that they have support, they are more likely to put themselves forward. And in that regard, having a mentor within the organization, having someone who supports and kind of stands by as an ally, which is another word that we've learned to use this year and that has become very, very important. I think that's also extremely valuable to the women, because often is that first step that may block them if they don't feel that they are going to be listened to, or if they don't feel that they are going to be sort of supported in their journey, in their developmental journey. So mentoring, having mentoring, developing allies, and having a transparent communication culture is definitely very beneficial.
If I may, I would like to also add that, yeah, I agree with Alexandra as well as Nilam, that setting that example, like Nia said, when a woman has been successful or well integrated, and that will inspire other women. So, like seeing is believing in most of the cases here on the ground. So it's very practical. And mentoring, I can't agree more with Alessandra, because I myself, I really needed this mentoring sessions sometimes it's not always with the woman as well. There are many mentors who can be made, and then it's a learning goal to both parties, right? Sometimes I also mentor to other younger women or men, but I learn a lot, so much more from those who I mentor as well. It's a two-way of learning. So it's very important to give this space for women or whoever is whoever can be really multiplier to inspire younger generation. And so yeah, that's it for the moment. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much for to Misu and Alessandra for elaborating on this. This is indeed very interesting, and yeah, the role of mentorship, for example. I now have a question which is actually for the attention of Nia. Someone would like to ask what impact has the travel life certification on promoting women's empowerment and creating better working conditions at Khiri Travel and through the supply chain.
Yes, so Travel Life, there's criteria all about the HR policies and about, so for example, we are asked to highlight how many women are in the workforce, how many men, how many women are in the management position. And I think just looking at this data already creates awareness within our company, so we can see, oh wow, all managers are male. Okay, maybe we need to change something on that. So in that sense, it was really looking at ourselves and what we have in place, or what are where can we find women in our work. There was the benefit of the Travel Life certification. We also included in our assessments we do with the suppliers we work with. So we have a sustainability contract with all our suppliers, and we have a sustainability assessment with our hotel and excursion suppliers, and we do ask these questions to our suppliers to get more information of what is the difference between women in management positions and men. So yes, we have included that, and Travel Life gives you criteria to specifically focus on these issues. Yeah. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think it was very clear. Let me see, we have one new question. Yeah, so, well, of course, there are questions about COVID-19 and the impact on the pandemics and how government can support. So we know also that COVID-19 has affected more female workers than men workers, because they are usually considered as more dispendable. So in terms of supporting women, and from your point of view, from maybe more the business side or the education side, are there some measures that government could take to help the empowerment, especially in this difficult time of COVID-19 crisis?
Oh, definitely, government can do a lot better than what they are doing in most of the country. But concerning for us, I mean, you know, when you are a third world country, the challenge is bigger than the first world country, of course. But I think that, again, go back to you know, government empowering that. I still think that we in private sector should be also giving feedback and engage with the policymakers in order to give them more on-ground situation. And in that regards, the communication and trust building is so important that for me personally, I wish to see that you know, our newly elected government for 9 years now do that much more aggressively this time. The past 5 years has been a lot of planning and you know, doing the ground stuff that they are obligated to, because we have a long history of bad management of the country. And so now the second term here in my country is that we kind of like okay, we give them 5 more years, but we want to see a much more push. But on the other hand, also that we in private sector, we can't just, you know, complain and doing or pointing out, but we also need to bring practical solution, because we are very good at practical things. They're good at foreseeing and larger scale. So hopefully that we will be able to work hands in hand. That's my hope and wish. And we will try to contribute whatever we can, because we all know about, for me personally, is that empowering women is good for business. Again, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms.
If I may add, sorry, Sophie, I'm cutting across you. Can I add a little bit from, I guess, sort of a European perspective on the government side? I mean, we are dealing with a number of issues. I think at the moment in the UK, what's happening is that, and I think across Europe, what is happening is that women are leaving the sector in droves because often being in the lowest pay role, in the more flexible role, part-time, means that they are more easily dismissible. Now, what we are seeing though is that these women are moving away from the sector. They are going into other sectors, and the feeling is that although many of them are passionate about, you know, the tourism and hospitality economy, it is also true that when they find themselves in a situation where, you know, they find new jobs, which are Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, paid the same and sometimes even better, they are a lot less likely to go back into work. So, and this problem now is compounded by the fact that here in, I guess at this end, that, you know, the UK is leaving the European Union, and historically the sector has relied on sort of employees that come from other parts of Europe, and therefore we are going to find ourselves with an incredible loss of talent. So this is a real problem at this end, and I think that government has sort of a big role to play with industry. What we have seen during the pandemic is that really the travel sector in particular has not been supported and understood. Some sort of measure of support have been put in place through the furlough and the job retention scheme, mostly focused on hospitality, which is great. But there are sort of tour operator, travel agent, and other sort of aspect of the tourism economy or the visitor economy that are being totally forgotten. So there is no doubt that more can be done, and particularly sort of on the female side of that. I mean, it's been called a she session at this, you know, this pandemic because of the impact on women across the board. And the other thing is that, in my mind, and I know that this is a highly contested issue, but in terms of women at the top of the ladder, at the top of their career and in senior position, we see a difference between countries where there is a quota and countries, you know, the Scandinavian country, for example, that have always pushed for a minimum amount of women on board on the back of the fact that it is demonstrable that women who are sort of companies who have women in senior position and senior leadership and board position are more profitable, more sustainable, and give better return on investment even to their shareholders. So I know that that's a highly contested area, but I do believe that, you know, more could be done by government in that area, because there are still a lot of businesses who simply don't understand and don't want to look at the issue of sort of gender pay gap and sort of gender development overall. And the other point, I guess, and final point, is that this is a very fragmented sector. And even if we sort of, however we look at it, even if we have to look strictly at hospitality, 80% of the probably of the sector is made up by small and medium-sized enterprises. And those, of course, have less understanding, but also less resources. They are dealing with the day-to-day and they face a lot of pressure. So I guess that helping that side of the economy also means helping women who are employed by sort of that type of employer, small and medium-sized employers. So I think there is so much more than government can do, and indeed with the support and the engagement of industry. So that dialogue can be highly improved, in my view, across the board.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sue and Alessandra, for these insights from across the world. Your answer highlights the importance of multi-stakeholder approach to progress on women's empowerment. Actually, because we are running out of time, I'm going to ask you one very last question that was submitted through the chat box, and I will ask you a very short question, but I think it's also a nice way to conclude this discussion. Can you please tell us what kind of career advice you would give a young woman entering in the sector?
I would, I'm just going to start now. I would suggest to a woman, there's a reason an employer hires you. An employer hires you because they trust your skills and they trust your ability. Very shy to speak up and to bring in their own ideas. But there is a reason you are in the company you're working for, and there's a reason you have that job. So I think it's very important to bring in your own ideas, speak up, and be motivated and engaged to really start a discussion and be a bit more outspoken.
Thank you, Nia. Is there anyone else who wants to share their advice?
Yeah. It's not our grandmother's time anymore. It's not our mother's time anymore. It's not even our time anymore, bit by bit. I think the 21st century, the challenges of 21st century cannot be only decided by half of the brain of the globe. And we have a role to play, very important role to play. And as a mother or as a woman, and if we say that we love our children, we should be jumping into sometime when we are a little bit scared of, but actually women exist for a good reason, right? So I don't think that any for the challenges of 21st century, we should be encouraged, and we should be confident enough that we can make a difference and dare to participate in for whatever, you know, future career or whatever we wanted to do as a child, since our childhood. That would be my 2 cents for younger generation. Thank you.
And I would add to this, find a mentor, find yourself a mentor, someone who supports you, who can be there, who has no other agenda but supporting your development and your progression. And, you know, look around you, because you can't be what you can't see, as we said again. And, you know, if you see other senior women or senior men indeed, you know, that you have an affinity with, go ask them, don't be shy. Ask them to mentor you, ask them, you know, share your ambition, because people have to know, and as well, otherwise they can't help you. So definitely use mentoring as a great resource, and maybe have more than one mentor too, as needed.
Thank you very much. And maybe from the skills development side, Hien or Suka, is there something else that you would like to add as a career advice for young women entering the tourism and hospitality industry?
In our program, SAI program, so we have supported disadvantaged girls to have such kind of career orientation. And we always talk with them that you just need to know what you want to be and what you want to work for. I mean, what you really dream to become. So have it and understand what you have to do to achieve it. So you will have your own path to implement and visualize and to how can I say, to make your dream come true. So have a clear path, understand who you are, what do you want to be, and then you will become the one that you want to be in the near future. Yes.
Thank you very much. So that's with these words that we are concluding our panel discussion. So Naiden, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sophie, and thank you everyone for your insights, your sharing your experiences, and these very inspiring words. Now, in order to conclude the panel discussion, we would like to present a quick video from one of the schools members of the ASSET-H&C ASSET-H&C. Just give me a second. Obviously, we have some technical difficulties.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marie. I am a former student in academic year 2016 and 17 of Travel Agency and Operation Program at Eco Bodobro. Now, I'm working as an education secretary in the school. To receive recognition for every completing task through verbal appreciation or other gesture, such as mentioning in the meeting or via email. As a woman, I have to be financially independent. In my society, most women tend to be financially dependent to the men. I believe I and other women can make a difference. It's allowed me to make my own decisions in my professional and personal life. Companies must open the door to equal opportunities for women and provide all necessary support to make sure the female staff can demonstrate their best at work to eventually earn equal benefits. To learn more about their good practices, check VPR. Somakun, thank you so much.
And with this, unfortunately, our event is coming to an end. It was a real pleasure and honor to be your host for today and for these amazing 2.5 hours and the conversation we had on empowering women workers in the Mekong H&T sector. Thank you everyone for your participation. Thank you for our guest panelists and for Sophie for leading this insightful conversation. Shout out to all of you who made the time today to join us and join this event. You will all receive the VPR publication via email after this webinar. And in addition, you can engage with our social media posts in the social media channels of Plan International and ASSET-H&C. On behalf of the organizers, Plan International and ASSET-H&C, thank you for joining and have a great and warm holidays. Goodbye.